Good evening, everyone. We are here today to present our legal analysis on a landmark case in Indonesian corporate history, PT Garuda Indonesia. Our presentation explores how this national carrier survived a massive financial crisis through the lens of business law. Before we begin, allow me to introduce you guys to our team. My name is Putra Alvinca Harum with NIM 406, and here is my friend Salsabil with the Amalia with student ID 593, and this is my friend Fahri Sulhan with student ID 332. Together, we will examine the multi-dimensional legal strategies covering banking, bankruptcy, and monopoly laws that allowed Garuda to stay in the skies. Okay, so let's start with the introduction of this case. PT Garuda Indonesia is a strategic state-owned enterprise, but it recently faced an unprecedented debt crisis with liabilities exceeding 142 trillion rupiah. This was not just caused by this pandemic, but also long-standing issues like high aircraft leasing costs and operational ineffectiveness. This situation created severe risk of insolvency, threatening the airline's going concern status. From a legal perspective, Garuda's situation is a complex puzzle. The company had to simultaneously negotiate with state-owned banks, defend itself in commercial court against international lessors, and manage investigations from competition regulators. Our analysis aims to show how these three legal areas, banking, PKPU, and anti-monopoly, intersect to either save or challenge a distressed corporation. We will now move into the specific legal breakdown, starting with the banking sector. To provide deeper insight into why this case is so foundational, we must look at the socio-economic philosophy of a state-owned enterprise, or BUMN. In legal theory, Garuda Indonesia operates under a dual mandate. On one hand, it is a limited liability company, Persero, mandated to seek profit. On the other hand, it is an instrument of the state intended to provide public service and national connectivity. When we analyze background of the 142 trillion rupiah debt, we aren't just looking at poor management. We are looking at the moral hazard that often exists when an entity is perceived as too big to fall. This concept suggests that because Garuda is so integral to the Indonesian economy, the government and the creditors were trapped in a cycle where they had to keep the airline afloat, even as the debt became unsustainable. This tension between corporate independence and state responsibility is what makes the legal framework so incredibly complex to navigate. Furthermore, we must reflect on the global context of the aviation industry's legal resilience. Garuda's financial collapse was not an isolated event, but it served as a litmus test for the Indonesian legal system's ability to handle a corporate crisis of this magnitude. In this introductory phase of our study, we observed that the background of the problem wasn't just about lack of cash, but about a systemic failure in long-term contractual obligations, particularly the unconscionable aircraft leasing agreements that were signed years ago. These contracts so lopsided that they effectively drained the company's liquidity before the first passenger even boarded. Therefore, our analysis in the following chapters isn't just about debt. It is about how the law functions as a corrective mechanism to rebalance unfair commercial positions and ensure that the national flag carrier can continue to serve the public interest without being a permanent drain on the state budget.
Turning to banking law, Garuda's recovery relied heavily on its relationship with the Himbara Group. Banks like Mandiri, BNI, and BRI. Legally, these banks must adhere to the prudential principle atau prinsip kehati-hatian. They cannot simply waive debts. They must ensure that any restructuring complies with OJK regulation regarding credit quality and risk reserves. The negotiation focused on extending the repayment period and reducing interest rates to provide Garuda with much needed financial relief. The most critical legal mechanism here was the debt to equity swap. This allowed Garuda to convert its massive banking debts into shares, effectively turning creditors into owners. This significantly improved Garuda's balance sheet by reducing liabilities and increasing capital. For the banks, this required a careful legal valuation of the shares to ensure no loss of state assets. While for Garuda, it provides the essential liquidity needed to maintain daily operations and restore creditor confidence.
Expanding on the banking law aspect, we need to dive into the technical nuance of the haircut and cram down strategies that were applied during this negotiation. When the Himbra banks agreed to the debt to equity swap, they weren't just being generous, they were performing a calculated risk assessment under the OJK exit strategy guidelines. From a legal standpoint, a bank must justify why it prefers owning volatile shares over holding fixed debt claim. The probable principle requires that this bank prove that the long-term recognition and value of healthy Garuda is higher than the immediate liquidation value of its asset. This involves a deep dive into the equity of earnings and legal certainty of the new shares issues. If the banks had failed to conduct this due diligence, the management of those banks could have faced gratification and state loss allegation under anti-corruption laws. This is show that banking law in Indonesia is intricately tied to public accountability, especially when state-owned banks are the primary creditors. Regarding the PKPU process, one might wonder why 95% of creditors, many of whom were international lessors, voted in favor of 20 years repayment plan. The answer lies in the psychology of the creditor. Within the framework of Indonesian bankruptcy law, usually the cram-down power of PKPU allows a plan be binding on all creditors once the majority agrees and the court approves it. For the lessor, the legal alternative was a fire sale of Garuda assets in a global market where aircraft prices were plummeting. A bankrupt Garuda meant they would recover perhaps only 5 or 10 cents on the dollar. By choosing the PKPU peace plan, they essentially bet on the legal stability of the Indonesian court system to enforce Garuda promise for the next 2 decades. This highlights that our bankruptcy law is not just a death sentence for companies, but a sympathized negotiation tool that uses the threat of total loss to force all parties into more rational long-term settlement.
In the realm of bankruptcy law, Garuda faced a massive PKPU at the Jakarta Central Commercial Court. Under Law Number 37 of 2004, Garuda was legally eligible for bankruptcy because it had multiple creditors and unpaid matured debts. However, management strategically chose PKPU over liquidation. This legal path provided a moratorium, a temporary shield that stopped all debt collections, while Garuda drafted a compensation plan to settle with its thousands of creditors. The success of this process was defined by the creditors' vote. Garuda's proposal, which included long-term repayment schedules and debt conversions, received a staggering 95% approval rate. This led to homologation, where the court officially endorsed the peace plan. This result saved Garuda from being dismantled and gave them a 20-year window to repair their debts. However, this is a conditional victory. If Garuda fails to honor the terms of this court-sanctioned plan, they can be declared bankrupt immediately without any further PKPU process.
While dealing with debt, Garuda also had to navigate the strict boundaries of Law Number 5 of 1999 regarding anti-monopoly and unfair business competition. The KPPU, Commission for the Supervision of Business Competition, investigated Garuda for alleged price fixing and cartel activities. In a market where Garuda holds a dominant position, any secret coordination with other airlines to set ticket price is a serious violation. The legal principle here is that financial distress is not a valid excuse to engage in anti-competitive behavior that harms the public interest. The KPPU eventually sanctioned Garuda, emphasized that corporate efficiency must be achieved through innovation, not collusion. This case reached the Supreme Court, which reinforced the KPPU's authority to monitor ticket pricing and cargo rates. For Garuda, this serves as a legal reminder that their recovery must be transparent. They are now required to report pricing policy change to the KPPU, ensuring that while the company recovers financially, it does not exploit its market power or damage the national economic landscape.
To synthesize our discussion, the survival of Garuda Indonesia is a testament to the strategic use of Indonesian business law, to the integration of banking restriction, and the PKPU process provides the necessary financial and legal foundation for the airlines to continue its operations as a going concern. However, as we have seen, this path is fraught with legal obligations that require the highest level of managerial discipline and transparency to ensure all stakeholders' interests are protected.
Therefore, our primary recommendation is for the management to strictly institutionalize good corporate governance, GCG, and compliance. Garuda must ensure that its pricing strategies remain competitive and free from the shadow of cartel-like behavior to avoid further legal battles with the KPPU by maintaining a clean legal record and complying with competition laws. Garuda can rebuild its reputation and secure long-term stability in the global aviation market.
Okay, so that was our explanation. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for listening. I'm Alvin. This is Salsabil, and this is Fahri. Thank you all so much for listening. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye-bye. Bye.